just a hack. It's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone and Sean Anderson, two former college football players from the University of Rhode Island. Today we're going to be recapping the action from round one of the FCS football playoffs, but we have breaking news. Literally, as we were right about to hit the record button, we might have had to have done this if we waited 5 minutes longer in the middle and reacting to as the news broke. But we're going to talk about off the top. Delaware is moving up to Conference USA. Obviously, this has significance to Sean and I because we spent a good part of our career playing against Delaware. I was recruited by Delaware. Big FCS footprint on the East Coast. We're going to talk about that coming up and more. Before we do, though, Sean, can you just share with our listeners a quick word from Bet Online?
Yeah, next year I'm going to petition that we get coach firing props, set up before the season. And Frank Reich would have been on the list for me. I can't believe he got dumped already.
You would have been that early?
Carolina stinks. But it should be Brandon Staley next. And then Josh McDaniel's already out. So there's a lot of coach movement. It's a really odd time of the year, but I would like to put some action on it eventually. But if you like betting on actual games and not dumb stuff like me, head to Bet Online today. Remember to use our promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All types of parlays, straight bets, other props. It's just fun. Bet Online, where the game starts.
All right, Sean. So Pete Thamel, who is a very, very reliable source within the college football community with ESPN, he is tweeting, Conference USA is expected. Delaware is a new member for the 2025-2026 season. The sides have been in talks and a decision is expected to be formalized in the upcoming days. This is something that I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I had sourcing on this, but it was something that you talk to people who, a guy knew a guy that they were interested in Conference USA. And I'll be completely honest, Sean, when I was on my visit to Delaware, that was one of the things that was actually brought up. I was there, the Delaware visit and the Stony Brook visit, both of those visits, they indicated that they wanted to look and explore expanding their stadium so that they can move up. Now there is this bigger barrier where it's not a few $1,000s. It's now, I believe, $1 million is the barrier to move up to FBS. It's interesting that they're not moving up until 2025. Not unexpected because we see this happening right now with Kennesaw. But here we are. I think that if there was a FBS brand to move up, Delaware makes the most sense. A lot of people will sit here and say that are not really understanding of the FCS landscape that would say Montana State should, or North Dakota State, South Dakota State should. It's a very different brand of football in those states. They are very proud of being dominant at the FCS level. A program like Delaware, just looking to move up and expand their athletic program. Not like those programs that, again, are continually dominant at the FCS and want to stay that way.
Yeah, no one's I'm not going to say that Montana couldn't go up to the Mountain West or Montana State couldn't, but there's just different circumstances because Delaware has its own East Coast pocket, and it's got a good amount of students attending the school. It's got a good enough stadium, enough CUSA-esque traits where it makes sense to me. It does. I mean,
right.
People are going to react like, the knee jerk is, well, JMU deserved to move up because they won a championship and, they dominated the CAA, and Delaware scraped by Lafayette. True. That's true. And that's a fair reaction given the lack of, I guess, deep playoff success that Delaware has had, but it's still a good enough brand on the East Coast in that Mid-Atlantic where you know people that went there, people that want to go there. So it seems like a rational move to me. And I would say that Delaware might be more well-known than James Madison when they were both at their FCS peak. That's how it is, right, in my opinion, just because it's a big enough, it's a state school. It is the state school. The state school typically in a single A conference.
They're joining the ranks of Liberty, New Mexico State. That's the one that really catches my eye, that they have to play New Mexico State and how far they are. But the rest of these teams, the regionality makes a ton of sense. Jacksonville State, Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State, Louisiana Tech, Sam Houston, UTEP, FIU, all are within a striking distance. And frankly, not much further away than where they had to travel to go play the likes of Maine in the CAA. So not really anything too odd there. They'll have to compete with a number of former FCS programs that have moved up and developed into pretty competitive teams. I will say this. I would expect their trajectory to not be on the same path as what we saw from Jacksonville State, who was immediately competitive, and what we saw from James Madison, who was obviously immediately competitive. There were other programs that also joined and immediately put up some pretty good wins. I would expect them to be a lot closer to Sam
It'll
Houston
be more
the first
reflective
couple
of
years.
Sam Houston. Yes, it will be, because Jacksonville State and James Madison are doing not the unthinkable, but the unorthodox when moving up, where and it's going to take a little bit of time for Delaware. It just will. You know, they got some guys that went to the NFL recently. Troy Reader's still playing his ass off. Nazir Adderley, I don't know if he retired.
I don't know if I forget what but they do have a number of guys.
They have
NFL production,
They
man.
do.
They've got some decent NFL production.
They do. So that's a good facet for them. Facet? I don't know. It's not a bad move. It's not a bad move at all. I don't mind it. I think that while all this realignment stuff is going on, if you want to try to make your move now, because eventually there's going to be another wave and more teams are going to be moving. So why don't you just get ahead of the curve, get your stuff situated now, get the papers rolling so it can be an easier transition before it all crumbles again.
Right. I wonder.
And CAA fans shouldn't be upset because the CAA keeps on adding teams. You know,
right. I almost
like
think
5 teams since we graduated.
Yeah, the CAA I think might have predictively had known that this was happening, and they deliberately went out of their way to add as many teams as they did, because they were. I also wouldn't be shocked if somebody else doesn't try to move up in the same timing, but we'll have to see what happens. All right, Sean, let's talk about these round 1 games. We will get to Delaware versus Lafayette later on. I'm going to start us off with Gardner-Webb versus Mercer. This game was pretty competitive. It was pretty close. 17-7 was the final score. My real main takeaway from this, and again, it was very close, and I think it's indicative of how messy the next round game will be against South Dakota State for Mercer, that I thought that just Mercer had smothering coverage. Gardner-Webb had really no success finding any chunk plays, and I think the 7 points is pretty reflective of that. I also think what was noticeable is what we knew coming into this is that Mercer just has really good athletes. Ty James, Deveron Harper, they were picking up a lot of chunk yards. They were picking up a lot of big plays when they needed them. And it was just a lot of move down the field on the drives that they were able to put points on the board. But I'm not really surprised by the final outcome here. Gardner-Webb was fine. They got in because of an AQ, and here it is. They got knocked out early, which we talked about when we predicted.
Yeah, I was surprised to see Gardner-Webb with 3 interceptions in this game. Mercer, good job. You coached and played the way you needed to beat the AQ in the first round. It's a good win. It's not a super flashy win. It's not a sexy win. It's not a win where you're looking down the barrel if you're SDSU like, oh my gosh, they really put something out there for us. They might challenge us. No. We'll preview also. But it's a good enough win. Get to the second round. Give yourself a shot. And that's what they did. And just keep getting your guys involved. You get Ty James involved. Get your playmakers involved. That's all you need to do. That's what you should do. You're not the well-built juggernaut team. You're the team that has a couple dudes that are going to make a real push for the next level. So let them break the game open, because you don't have the all 22 clicking in that way. But it's a good win. It's a good win.
Yeah, a quality win, and not a how do I want to put this? It's not important for it's not important for the whole landscape of the playoff, because as we're talking about here, this was a matchup of 2 teams of who gets slaughtered.
Yeah,
first.
It's an unfortunate draw to be cannon fodder for SDSU, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That should have been what game was it? There was one. Actually, no, that probably is the most fitting of being the cannon fodder, because there were a couple teams which we'll get to that just clearly were not playing the same sport. One of those was Duquesne, who Sean prematurely took a victory lap over 40-7
Look,
loss to Youngstown State. Holy hell, this was a bloodbath. These NEC teams tend to really struggle in these first round games, as we've seen in the history of the playoff. One thing that really stood out to me, I knew that this Youngstown offense was good, but I was really amazed by how easily and willingly they were able to air it out. They were taking shots deep. They were connecting on them. Even when they weren't, it was setting up other plays down the line for them to hit. I really liked the offensive approach. Darius Parentes, former teammate of ours, was running for his life in this game. He was not able to really have a clean pocket, and I think that pressure really got to him. A guy who was up for the Walter Payton. I don't think he's probably going to win it, but he was up for the award because of the stats that he put up. Plain and simple, Sean, massive talent gap. There was a pretty noticeable, glaring talent gap between these two teams.
You think Bryce Oliver averaging 22.6 yards a catch in this game indicates a massive talent gap, Joe? You're silly. You're being a silly goose.
Maybe just a little bit.
What about Tyshawn King averaging 5.3 yards a carry for 101 yards? Yeah, Youngstown. This is the opposite of the Mercer win. When I was saying that Mercer didn't have a sexy, flashy, oh gosh, they're rolling win. This is what Youngstown did. Putting up 40, having the offense look that good, having the defense look that good. That is a win that makes the team that you're playing next buckle it up a little bit this week during practice. It's not we're on to the next playoff game. It's we have to win this one. Villanova is having different thoughts on Sunday than they were on Friday. Much different. Because you just don't want to see that 40 bomb coming down the pike. And it looks like it did.
I forget if we included this one, but I really think that Youngstown Villanova game, I actually really think that is going to be a chippy matchup. That's probably one of the better unranked games. And I know because you're the 8 seed, you're going to draw one of the more difficult opponents. And that's exactly what happened here. They have to face probably one of the best, if not the best, unseeded team. Actually, I'd probably give that to North Dakota State after we saw the mess that they put out there against Drake, which we'll get to in a second. Sac State versus North Dakota ended up being a high-flying, high-scoring affair. It looked like Sac State might actually pull away pretty easily, but North Dakota put up a pretty good fight. Final score ends up being 42-35. This was a pretty nice battle that we saw between these two teams. North Dakota's defense, non-existent, and that was something that I was unsure of. The same thing really stands for North Dakota for me, Sean. I really don't know what they did well enough to win this game. They just don't have that X factor to pull out a game like this. I will say, where the hell was this version of Caden Bennett when we needed him? That version of him and the performance that he put up, him and Marcus Fulcher, it's almost like because of, and I think that Bennett maybe dealt with an injury off the top of my head. I don't know for certainty. I know that Fulcher was in and out of the lineup, but if this is what they look like at full health, and this is the team that we're going to get on a week-to-week basis during the rest of the playoffs, do not be surprised that they don't come out and beat South Dakota. I really don't think that should be a hot take.
It's not a hot take. When Sac State really gets rolling, they're an impressive bunch. I do have to give credit to North Dakota because Sac State kind of set the FCS Twitter sphere ablaze in the first half of this game, where everybody was, I guess, getting the Twitter fingers out. They were feeling themselves during the holidays. Sac State's offense waking up. Oh my, where was this all? I'm like, oh God, they must really be putting it on them. They must really be, blowing them out. No. It's a 1-score game. North Dakota fought. So that's a tough loss for them. They just weren't as talented enough. They're probably as good as Sac State, not as talented. And unfortunately, Sac State, when they showed up and they really played to their potential, they won the game. That is not a fun team to play when they're hot. I don't want to mess with Caden Bennett. I don't want to mess with Marcus Fulcher if their offense is really going like that. Their defense still gave up 35, but if you can go blow for blow, Sac State's going to get creative on you, and they're going to end up scoring some points. So it's going to be a fun. you have to think after this game it's gonna be a dud, right?
I know that's
And
the
I don't
thing
know
with
why I'm
Sac
saying that.
State
It's
is
just a gut feel that it's gonna be a dud
they've
now.
done that all year. They've
You know what? They have done that
laid
all year.
eggs.
And I don't want them to lay an egg. I want that South Dakota Sac State game to be really fun. It just feels like they are. Feels like they're gonna lay a little bit of an egg.
I think that I agree with that, but I feel like that this might have been an indication that they're back at full strength. But at the same time, as you were just talking about, there was a pretty clear, for those that were invested in the FCS and paying really close attention to it, everybody saw what we saw, that North Dakota was not as good as we thought that they were. And maybe this win looks better and more propped up because you're beating a top 25 team. But the reality of it is you're beating an unjustly ranked top 25 team that really only had one good win. North Dakota played the game of their lives against North Dakota State and then proceeded to just be mid the rest of the way. So maybe it's not that much of an accomplishment that they performed the way that they did, or that Sac State ended up beating North Dakota, because you're beating a fool's gold type team.
That's fine, but I thought Sac State was fool's gold also. I had them at like 24 in my final.
Well, that's the hilarious part, is that like both of these teams arguably did not really belong in the bracket.
I don't know if they did.
They end up playing the best game of the playoffs.
Yeah, that seems to be how it goes, isn't it?
This next one was probably the worst game of the first round and will be the worst game of the playoffs. I jokingly said that Drake should not get off the bus against North Dakota State. And you know what? They heeded my advice. They did not show up on the field. This is a score 66-3, as if they stayed in the hotel and North Dakota State just ran on air for the whole game. And then somehow they just handed 3 points to Drake at at whatever point. I'm going to be completely honest with you, Sean. I don't know about you, and I don't care if anyone gets mad at me for this. I didn't watch the highlights to this game. I didn't get eyes on this game. There's nothing I could have watched with this game that would have told me anything. It was 66-3. This was a warm-up game. This was a bye week for North Dakota State, like we said that it was going to be. I'm not wasting my goddamn time watching that crap, because that was a bloodbath.
You're not doing your due diligence, buddy. You need to watch all the games. I bet you'd never even watch the game. I bet you don't know ball.
Yeah, I didn't watch the game. I'm not wasting my time watching the game.
You don't know ball crowd is going to have to come after you. I watched every second of this game. Don't ask me to prove it.
Shut the hell up.
Tape. Very interesting matchup. No, look, it's so FCS for this to be like who North Dakota State drew. It's so FCS, right? How did they know? Like, why would they cook it up like this? Why would they cook it up like this, Joe? Letting North Dakota State figure out how to score again in the playoffs?
They gave them a warm-up. They gave them a walk.
I know what they did. And it's frustrating that they got Drake. They didn't get North Dakota. They didn't get any
Drake.
They didn't get any bump. Whatever. How much more can we talk about?
They should have given him North Dakota. That would have been fun. But, here we are talking about nothing. NC Central versus Richmond. NC Central versus Richmond, 49-27 was the final score of this game. Richmond pulls out the victory. Dude, this was a weird one, because NC Central was pulled away with this thing. Davius Richard was balling out. He was playing out of his mind to the expectation that we thought he was going to play. They had this game, and then suddenly Richmond just made probably some of the best adjustments, mid-game adjustments that I've ever seen, where there were no open receivers, complete lockdown coverage. They did a great job of containing Davius Richard, and they pulled away. And I think what was the big dagger in this was the punt return touchdown, and then there was that crazy kind of bobbled long pass that was then caught and returned for a touchdown. I don't know if returned is even the right word there, but there were two back-breaking daggers that happened at the end of this game that just completely helped Richmond pull this thing away and seal the deal.
Did Richard go down in the first for a little bit? I thought he might have gotten a little tweak. I thought I saw that posted.
I don't think.
Here's what's impressive about this. Richmond, Northern Virginia is the emergency capital of the U.S. There couldn't be more ambulances and more fire trucks.
Ambulances.
Look, Richmond, I've been harsh on all year. To be fair, I've been harsh on them. I didn't think they had any quality wins. I didn't think they really played the rough CAA schedule that they could have. But they won the games. They made the playoffs. Okay, putting up 49 against a very good NCCU team, that's impressive. I am impressed with that. They earned it. That's a huge win. That is a good NCCU team that would give anybody bump. Gosh, it's baffling. How does Richmond do that? How did Richmond come out and light the damn candle? I guess Wickersham just decided, all right, it's playoff time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ball the hell out. 7 incompletions, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, 70 yards on the ground. Impressive. He impressed me.
Pivotal. He was pivotal for that second half, sir. It's just crazy because it was literally 2 different halves, and it was one of those ones where you kind of you're peeping the score and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, NCCU is going to pull away with this thing," but Richmond ends up getting a pretty big victory. Nicholls, another dead body on the mat, 35-0 versus SIU. Nicholls is probably one of the most barnyard ass teams that I've watched, man. There was nothing that I got from them. There wasn't a second in this game where I was like, oh, they might have a shot. It was just like, SIU, go ahead, man. Do what you got to do. We'll let you take this one home. Sean, this was one of those
Why do
games.
you do this every year? Every year we do an FCS round 1 bracket, you yell about the AQs. And I'm getting flashbacks.
Because a bunch of them suck.
I'm getting flashbacks to last year when you're yelling about all the same things. Why are you so angry?
Sean, this is one of those games, though, where you have to stand up and you have to go outside for a little bit, and then you got to come back and sit back down because you're like, what? What? This was not a football game. This was a bludgeoning. There was not a single instance where Nicholls had an opportunity to do anything in this game. They got down in the red zone once and failed to convert on a 4th and goal. That was about it. This is one of the worst games that I've watched all year. It wasn't even entertaining. It was just like, oh, another bad offensive drive. Oh, SIU. Oh, they're going to go down and score again. Oh, another bad offensive drive. Oh, Nicholls going down. Oh, they got stopped on 4th and goal. Bad game. I'm sorry, anyone who watched this. I'm genuinely sorry.
I'm not saying it's a good game. But you can't keep yelling about the AQs. They
will.
They deserve their shot. They earned it. Look, yeah, SIU. The best thing to come out of this game is that if they're hot, then we might have a good game between them and Idaho. Like that's the best thing that could have come from this game is for them to win in dominant fashion, and then maybe get some momentum going into Idaho because that should be a fun one, or it could be, It could be similar to this. Idaho could roll over them because SIU is one of those teams where where they beat somebody 35-0.
Yeah, very, very streaky.
And then they get beat 35-0. So what do we do with it? I don't know. Could be fun, though. Could be fun.
Lafayette versus Delaware. This one was really weird to follow. I really thought that Lafayette was going to pull this thing out and I was going to be vindicated. And I think I am a little bit because I still believe that Lafayette.
You were close.
Yeah. They played a really, really good football game and they played their brand of football, which is turn the football over. Jamar Curtis, they just ran all over that Delaware defense. And he's a fun little back. He's got, good feet. He did a really good job in the goal line situations. He's so low to the ground. But they just did not have the offensive juice to slow down and go shot for shot with what Delaware did in the second half. And what Delaware did is they locked in. They did everything that they need to score quickly. They got stops on key drives. It's kind of similar to the Richmond NC Central game where, you make early mistakes. You're playing sloppy. You let your opponent take a decently sized lead. And then you're saying to yourself at halftime, all right, guys, we got to stop playing around. We think that we're better than this team. We know that we've got more talented football players. They're just playing a more sound brand of football. And they came out, they cleaned up. They really, really locked down on defense that slowed everything down. But the biggest issue, Lafayette could not tackle in the second half. There were a lot of yards after catch plays where guys were just streaking down the field. Like Yarns, I don't know why I completely forgot his name. Yarns had a couple of runs where he just picked up nice chunk plays. The lack of tackling showed up, and I think that's a big reason why Delaware was able to take advantage of the fact that they've got some pretty good athletes.
Yeah, Delaware also has to be noted. They've played about every quarterback on the roster this season. Tons of Ryan O'Connor, and then Nick here we go. Nick Minucci. I should have known that. I had a bat with a similar brand name. I don't know why I got caught up on the double C's. Regardless, Minucci came in and did the damn thing. It looked like a Ryan O'Connor stat line. Not a ton of attempts, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a good system. Their system has to be good if the backups and the third string or whoever the hell you have in there playing quarterback all year can go in and produce similar results. It's a good system, and Lafayette is a good team. Jamar Curtis is a very fun, very good player at the running back position for Lafayette. Fat stats a couple of times. He had a really good year. Delaware, though, I would not be comfortable playing Delaware knowing that they're succeeding without their top guy throwing the ball. That is dangerous. That is a team that is playing all 22. Everybody is getting it done and capping. They could have just chalked it up. Said, hey, you know what? We just wasn't it for us this year. We got too injured. Lafayette was really hot. They were a good team. They could have chalked it up. We've seen stuff like that happen before. They did not. Impressive win, tight win, good game.
Chattanooga versus Austin Peay, the last game that we're talking about here. This actually was a really freaking fun game. This might have been, in all seriousness, the best game of the first round. Final score ends up being 24-21. They really fought with each other, and it felt like Chattanooga had a little bit of an edge for most of this game. It felt like they just were really pushing around Austin Peay. You saw the size and the physicality difference on the offensive and defensive line, and we know that Chattanooga pumps out really good NFL-worthy offensive linemen every other year, and they put out some really good defensive linemen that they have and bring to the table. They've got some really good players. I think that Austin Peay just did a really nice job of scratching and clawing and fighting to stay in a game that, like many of these other teams, all these other AQs, I think if this was Nicholls, this game would have been much more of a blowout. Instead, they stepped up to the plate. They weren't afraid to go punch for punch with Chattanooga. It ends up being a very late last-second field goal that seals the deal for Chattanooga. But hell of a game. This one was really fun to track.
Yeah, Mike DeLello, they went with a heavy ground game. He still did fine. He threw a touchdown. He had 100 yards. I don't know if that was the right call. Maybe that's what the game was accounting for. And they said, okay, we can keep grinding it out, keep running. I mean, if you have a running back like Javon Jackson that can go for 184, 2 touchdowns, it'd be silly for me to be saying that you should have passed more. But DeLello was a Walter Payton finalist. He was a vote non-existent. I don't understand that decision. I understand the decision of wanting to run the ball in the playoffs. I understand the decision of doing that.
Yeah, but you're not going to out physical.
I don't think
a more physical team.
They're not.
That's what the stupid part was.
It was just questionable on the pass game of why it disappeared when that seemed to be their bread and butter. At least closing it out. I mean, he was finishing hot, and it's just a little bit baffling. Now, Chattanooga fluky touchdown, very fun touchdown on the pick. I believe it was Javon Watley who ended up stripping the ball on the interception and then ran it back in for the touchdown. Those plays are always wacky, and you can see some of those wacky plays on the wacky days.
I swear to God. We need a soundboard with that. with that
Do
on
you
it.
think that? No,
On
I'm
a
not
wacky
gonna
play
be mean.
on a
I'm not going to be
wacky
mean to
day.
him. He hasn't been mean to me. I'm not going to.
I don't care. I'll be mean.
I
to
know
him.
you will.
Oh, you haven't heard the things that he says behind your back.
Oh,
What are you talking about? Here?
I know.
You think he's not one of those people? You think he's not one of those
What do you
people?
mean? Has he been? Has he been?
I
saying
don't
things?
remember exactly, but he used to shit talk everybody. What
What'd
are
he
you
say about
talking
me?
about? You know he. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that he shit talked every single person that we did student radio with.
Interesting.
That's why I don't take that guy seriously.
Interesting. Well, at least we stayed on air.
I forget what he said, but there's plenty of times, man, that he's everybody. I mean, you know, he shit talk. You've been around. I mean, the guy that we're referencing, just a barnyard goofy ass kid who did student radio at Rhode Island and went viral because he had one of the worst play calls that I've heard in my life, and I don't think you'll ever hear anything worse after a pretty crazy interception that happened against URI and William and Mary a few years ago. But you knew him well enough to know that he would do that.
Look, he stirs the pot. Now I'm getting back into it. No, we can't. We have.
There's no pot stirring. He's just a bad person. He just sucks.
Oh.
There's no stirring the pot.
Well, Ohio State lost this weekend, so he can. You know, he.
I almost hopped in that chat, but I don't waste my time with lame ass people. I don't waste my time with that shit.
How about you know what? Chattanooga, though, we got to get back on topic. Solid season.
We were closing out.
Solid season. This is a good.
Save for Austin Peay. I think that it's tough, but
but Chattanooga this year never really felt like they had it all. But they're going to the second round of the playoffs. Even win or lose, that's a good year. That is a good year for them. It's just a good team. It's just a good football team that consistently felt like they were getting the short end of the stick when it came to either coverage or just general respect. And let's see what they do against Furman. I mean, Furman's gonna, but it'll be good. I mean, this was a fun game. I don't know why Austin Peay didn't pass it more, or have DeLeone have more control of the game. But you know what? That was the decision that was made.
Joe DeLeone and Sean Anderson, thank you for tuning in. At Joe DeLeone, at Sanderson Radio. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're tuning in. Podcast, video, you name it. Don't miss out as we're going to be previewing this. Is it this quarterfinals yet?
Just say second round. I just say second round because I don't know the difference between quarter, semi.
We'll be back